And welcome to another episode of Brothers Arguing Sports. I'm Zav. Across the Zoom is TD. We've also got Niles. And today, a very simple question: who's the better player, John Stockton or Chris Paul? Niles, why don't you go first?
Yeah, no problem. With Chris Paul, it's all about, I think, the longevity of his career is something to talk about as well as with John Stockton. Obviously, the thing with Chris Paul has been he's had terrible luck with his injuries. But his assist numbers, his defensive numbers have always been there. He's an elite defender, multiple time, like almost double digit, all defensive teams, and he has a good postseason record and track record. He's gone deep in the playoffs consistently. Rarely has Chris Paul been out of the playoffs. He's been competitive. He just hasn't gone deep in the playoffs, and that's been his one knock. But there's no doubt on what Chris Paul's been able to do on the floor. He's an amazing passer. He's a great shooter from mid-range and from three. Great assist to turnover rate, and he's clutch. He makes big shots.
You think
And
he's
he's
better than
small.
John Stockton, Niles?
Over John Stockton, it's hard to really argue because John Stockton's career is done. Chris Paul is still playing, and he's 19 years in, so he's got plenty of time. And
But
it's
right now, who's better?
right now it looks like it's John Stockton, but I'll give it to Chris Paul for right now in terms of the advantage factor because he still has time to chase.
But what's he gonna do now? He's come on. He's at the end of his career now.
He's still sharp though. He still plays the
Yeah.
game the right way. He's not physically sharp because obviously his body has let him down, but he still plays really hard. He still competes. He's a great leader. He brings a lot to the clubhouse. He brings a lot to the community wherever he goes. And he still has a good record of changing franchises. Golden State is dealing with a lot more than just Chris Paul this year.
Well,
Still okay.
let
TD,
me.
you go.
All right. Well, Niles, so you're saying Chris Paul's got a few more years to catch up with John Stockton.
Mm-hmm.
John Stockton at this stage of Chris Paul's career, you know how many games he was playing? 82 of 82, 64 of 64, 50 of 50, led the league, only guy to do it. 82 of 82. Now he's 38 years old. 82 of 82. Now he's 39 years old. 82 of 82. Now he's 40-year-old. 82 of 82. One thing you cannot deny, Stockton is the Iron Man. Okay? He's the Cal Ripken. He's fifth all time in games played, by the way. And you're right about Chris Paul. I actually liked a lot of the things you said. Chris Paul is a defensive guy. He is a steals guy. He is an assist guy.
So he's going to get injured. That's what's going to happen.
And yes, his Achilles heel is playoffs. He hasn't really made the runs. But John Stockton, all the things, and you said Chris Paul's a good jump shooter too. All the things you gave Chris Paul, Stockton's better at. Stockton is all time in the whole history of the league, number one in assists. In steals, John Stockton is all time number one in the league. Assist steals.
Doesn't mean he's a better defender.
All time. Okay. All time. Okay. And per game, he's even better than CP3 in assists and steals. Now, field goal percentage. John Stockton is the Iron Man. He doesn't miss a game. He plays 20 years, and his field goal percentage is over 50% for his career. John Stockton, looking this up, to me, is arguably the most underrated basketball player in the history of the NBA. I think it's all the things you give CP3, John Stockton is just a little better at. And what I'll knock CP3 on, and like you said, it's injuries. When I think of CP3, I think of Lob City, and what happened? He got injured. I think of the Rockets with James Harden, another great team. What happened? He got injured. What happened with the Suns when he was on that great team? He got injured. All deep in the playoff runs. Now he's with the Warriors, and what happened? He got injured. A great player, Chris Paul, a Hall of Famer, not at John Stockton's level, and just that availability in the injuries, I think, has killed his postseason resume.
Anything?
It's fair. I mean, with the injuries, it's fair. I mean, the injuries have been the one knock in Chris Paul's game. We can't complain about what he brings to the table when he's on the floor. He's an all-time great. I still am arguing that Chris Paul would be better than John Stockton if he were more healthy. Chris Paul has run into some horrible luck with injuries. because of how aggressive he plays.
Okay.
And because of that,
okay.
he has not been able to last deep into the playoffs.
Niles,
but he is one of the most valuable players in the league in his career because of the impact that he brings to the floor when he has the ball in his hands.
You don't lead the entire history of the NBA in steals if you don't play aggressive. To say John Stockton somehow isn't aggressive,
you have more all defensive.
You cannot make steals without being aggressive.
Paul is averaging over two steals per game and all defensive nods, and the physicality he plays with has annoyed many point guards in the league. Nobody's talking about the same phicality that John Stockton brought to the game.
Oh, that's not right, Niles. That is not true.
It's not about the physicality that I'm saying with Stockton, though.
Yes,
he had amazing hands. He had amazing IQ. He had a great time.
Niles.
We're talking about how physical he was compared to Chris Paul.
Niles. Gary Payton, who do you think was the toughest player he said he played against? Physically.
I know he said John Stockton.
My point is,
Stockton didn't have to out-physical Gary Payton to beat him. He beat him with his mind. He beat him with his hands.
Yeah, but Stockton was known as a tough guy too, though. He was a dirty player too. I mean, you can't just. My point is, here's what I say it. You could argue Chris Paul better defensively, okay, but Stockton still played great defense, okay? You could tell me, so you could make these little arguments, but what you can't argue, and I think that's the biggest point, is just the consistency of John Stockton. You know, every single year, those Jazz teams were good, all right? 5 conference finals, lost in the NBA finals twice to Jordan in a stacked Western Conference in his years. And he really, you know, people always say, well, Malone helped Stockton. They were 2 players. The rest of those team, Ostertag, Hornacek, Brian Russell, the 2 of them.
I wish I had this stat up, but I feel like the postseason games played between Chris Paul and Stockton it wouldn't be as big as you think of a margin. I wish I had the stat up still, but I'm saying I think it might be still.
But now throw away stats. Here's my issue with Paul, because I agree. At his best, I'd probably put him over Stockton. If you just take them both, you put them at their absolute best. Who plays better? I'd give you Paul. Okay, a little bit better of a scorer. You know, maybe I'll put you a little better defensively, but you can't ignore their careers. I mean, when I think of Chris Paul, you think about the Clippers. I remember they were up against the Blazers. First round, up 2-1, boom. He gets injured, out for the series. They lose. I think about that series against the Warriors when he was the Rockets. He has a great game. They go up 3-2, pulls his hamstring, out the next 2 games, boom. I think about that when the Mavs, remember the Mavs absolutely destroyed them in that game 7. He has these moments of just where Stockton was just consistent. You know
what? I think that's it. I think the decider is the durability.
Yeah.
That's the decider.
You can't.
Go ahead.
No, that's my point. When you think of Chris Paul's career, when I think of him, I think, wow, what a talent with New Orleans. Great player, rookie of the year. I remember him throwing lobs. But, okay, he couldn't win. He went to the Clippers. The Clippers were a disappointment. Lob City, you never felt like, wow, they maximized their talent. You know, he went to Houston. Oh, that was so disappointing. He got hurt. Whereas I feel with the Jazz, him and Malone got the most out of their careers. They just maximize. Okay, they lost to Jordan in the finals, but everybody lost to Jordan in the finals. So I think that, and that's where I put Stockton at his peak, maybe Paul.
Okay, and Niles, realistically, what do you think Chris Paul is going to do for the rest of his career? He's pretty much been done for 2 years now.
So what I come to expect when I watch Chris Paul play, and I'll end on this, it's been the case for when he's at a higher volume, obviously when he was younger, but still to this case when he's healthy now, is efficiency and toughness. And he's always been able to have communication while being through that. He's always been able to maintain those things. And that's why it's easy for me to trust Chris Paul against point guards in the era before and point guards in the era now. Because now it's about shot making. It's about being efficient. And Chris Paul has always been about efficiency, but he came in the league at a tough era. So he's had to play tough with a chip on his shoulder too.
I think
and
he's
Chris
had an
Paul has
easier
always
era.
been a combination of those two things. And although he's in his late 30s and early 40s now, he can still stay in the league because he brings that to the table along with his great IQ.
I think Stockton had a tougher era in terms of point guards, much tougher. He played in the 80s with
came in at the end of that era, just about.
With Magic, Isaiah,
yeah.
Mark Price, all those in the 80s.
And Zav, he got all those numbers in a defensive era.
Exactly. And then in the 90s, Gary Payton, Jason Kidd.
Stockton he's unbelievable. He's unbelievable.
The 2000s were a defensive era until 2010 came around.
But you know what? He even shot over 50%. That's what just amazed me, is that he even shot over 50% from the field. That threw me for a loop.
Yeah.
How many guards can shoot over 50%? You don't find that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Good debate. Let us know what you think in the comments. Have a great weekend, everybody.
All right, boys.
Watch some hoops.